So first, it's not an initiative. I think it's a whole movement of changing how a company drives decisions, runs the business, and drives customer experience, patient experience, right? Is it through the power of data and digital? It's these subtle ways a company operates that shows whether they truly believe in being data driven or they're not all on board with it.
Welcome to the Life Sciences Leadership Podcast, where we delve deep into the life sciences industry and uncover effective strategies, innovations, and future trends. Your host, Axtria's Jasmeet Sawhney, engages highly acclaimed leaders in discussions focused on directing commercial success in the life sciences industry. Whether you're transforming your commercial success strategy or just craving dynamic discussion, this is the show for you.
Hello everyone, I'm your host Jasmeet Sawhney and welcome to the Life Sciences Leadership Podcast brought to you by Axtria. Our goal with this show is to bring to you effective strategies, innovations, and most importantly, people who are driving improved business and patient outcomes within the life sciences industry. We have another amazing leader as a guest today. I'm excited to introduce Bharti Rai. Bharti is an accomplished and versatile leader with 25 years of experience in healthcare and Big Four management consulting. She has been at the forefront of strategy, business, and digital transformations to champion data-driven decision-making and customer centricity with a dynamic and collaborative leadership style. She joined Novartis in 2018 as VP of Commercial Operations, Insights, Data, and Analytics. She led the vision and creation of the US function from the ground up and transformed it from a back office function to a strategic one that helped with decision making across the business. Prior to Novartis, she held roles at Bayer Healthcare and Deloitte Consulting across process re-engineering, digital health, commercial operations, and data. She is recognized as an industry thought leader and is the recipient of numerous industry awards. Bharti, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jasmeet, and it's my pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, Bharti. I want to start with digital transformation, or to be more specific, commercial transformation. As the industry continues its transformation journey and the quest to leverage data and analytics across all touchpoints, there is a lot of emphasis on how organizations need to evolve. Do you see the need for people to evolve, and what role does culture and mindset play in this evolution?
Yes, absolutely. And, it's not a surprise saying. I think folks that have been driving the change in the industry for a while know that any digital transformation is not purely about the technology. It's truly about the people, especially if it has to succeed and it has to be ingrained in the DNA of how decision-making is made, how processes are run, how businesses are handled. So absolutely, about culture. I would say there are a few things about people, culture, that's critically important to digital and data transformation. I think the first thing is, how serious is the company about truly transforming to be digital, right? Are a majority of the folks, not just the leadership, but all of the leaders, the middle managers, do they see digital data as something on the side? Do they see it as innovation? Do they see it as something that can run in a parallel way to the core traditional way of doing things, or do they really see it as a strategic driver of the future business model? So that, I think, is kind of the first thing around mindset. Usually, I think a lot of these digital transformations are starting top down with leadership, and then a whole change management exercise with, the rest of the functions, whether it's marketing, sales, market access, patient services, all of these, finance. So I think getting the leadership to believe in it is not enough. It has to permeate the rest of the organization. I think the second thing is, once you've upscaled, right, your analytics capabilities, and also you've got counterparts in each function that have upskilled to know how to leverage the power of analytics, and you have that advanced capabilities in place to discover what the art of the possible is, then how serious are you in terms of adoption, right? And how serious are you in really going all the way to look at analytics recommendations, whether it's predictive models or whether it's, predicting patient cohorts or physicians that may adopt. How are we able to capitalize on that and really adopt what sales, marketing, other functions need to do? So I think those are the two things, right? Is it really lip service or is it truly going to be part of the DNA of the culture?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Bharti. Clearly, you have a firm belief that people, teams, and leaders need to evolve for the transformation to take place. But I want to understand, what are the consequences if this does not happen? What if people or teams fail to evolve?
So, at this point, we are in a digital age, right? Every industry around us has become digitized, and COVID, as we know, has accelerated a lot of these things that maybe the seeds were being planted years ago, but COVID has really accelerated a lot of these trends. So, healthcare has to digitize, and by healthcare, I mean beyond pharma and life sciences, right? I think just the whole ecosystem of how a patient's experience is, particularly if they have a chronic disease or if they're dealing with serious diseases, the whole experience from looking for information to finding the right specialists, to getting the right diagnosis, to getting the right treatment, whether it's the medicine or something else, to then working through all of the paperwork required to start your treatment. That whole journey has to be digitized. And I think particularly as life sciences and pharma companies, if we are truly serious about evolving our business model that has been kind of the traditional model for 20 years. I think we've been talking about transforming pharma. Then now is the time. What's the implication of that? I think we've seen the results, right? Companies that fail to evolve to this new world will face extreme competition from companies that are already ahead of the curve, or worse, be disrupted by someone outside the industry. And we've seen, a lot of the disruptors have come from outside the industry. So the question is, what can we do and fast enough, right? And mainstream, not as a side innovation gig, to truly become data-driven.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Bharti. That absolutely makes sense because healthcare is the last biggest industry that needs to be fully digitized, right? Most of the other industries have gone through this digitization that healthcare has to go through. And as you rightly said, pharma or life sciences has to really catch up on a lot of those fronts. And I can see why it's important for leaders to realize that what's at risk if they fail to evolve. Now, as organizations move along in the commercial transformation maturity curve, are there specific themes or behaviors that are making it more challenging for them?
Yeah. And I think, to your point, right, I think as an industry, we have realized that we have to do this. So I don't know if we still have companies that don't believe in digitization, right? I think we're there. The question is how? How do you do it? How do you do it effectively? And how do you do it at scale? And how do you do it with some lasting impact? And that's where I've seen industry companies, our industry struggling and trying a lot of things. I think there are a number of challenges or barriers at bay, right? Mm-hmm. One, I think maybe I'll give you 3 or 4. The first one is these roles around data and digital, they are not established in life science companies, right? I think companies are still trying to figure out what these roles are, not dissimilar to a CIO role maybe 20 years ago, right? Did they have a seat at the table? Are they responsible only for managing the systems, or are they a more strategic thought partner, right, on how technology can help business? So I think we're going through the same cycle in terms of data roles, data science roles, digital health roles, innovation roles, digital transformation roles, right? Like what is their part in the overall company? So that's kind of one. And I think that dictates then where the role sits, how they are supported, what they're accountable for. Do they sit in global? Do they sit at the local level? What's the autonomy, right? So that all those unsettled sort of things that come with newer C-suite roles is the first thing to, I think, tackle. And I don't know, honestly, if there's a right answer. it all depends on how the company is set up and, what the ecosystem is. I think the second challenge that we've seen definitely during COVID is talent, especially as healthcare tries to attract talent in data science that knows how to do data science like other companies. But honestly, you cannot do that without understanding the healthcare context, right? So we are very good at hiring great data scientists. And I think we've gotten better at the levels and the salaries to be able to attract some of this talent. But then the question is, once they're here, do you have critical mass? Do you know how to develop them? Do you know what the growth paths will be? And how do you support them? Because they're used to environments that may be nimble, that may have the infrastructure already so that they can basically do AI, right? And for a lot of companies, they're still fixing the foundation, if you will. Or even if they've kind of tackled the foundation, they're still trying to modernize and connect all of the technology systems to speak to each other so it can have more of an ecosystem that's always live, always on, connected, right, to enable then big data and AI. So I think that talent attracting, retaining, and developing is sort of another factor. And then I would say around operating model, we've figured it out. I think we've experimented a lot with operating models. And I think we know that, extreme centralization doesn't work and extreme sort of federation or decentralization doesn't work. I feel like it's a mix in the middle, because you want your data analytics teams to be sitting with the businesses that they're working on, whether it's, finance or marketing or sales or market access or patient services or BDNL, right? Whatever area you're supporting, you want to be sitting in it. And then you want to be changing the way you're viewed to not just be the supporter enabler, but really a powering function whose work then will underpin decision-making or recommendations or the way you're going to steer the business. And then lastly, I think the biggest challenge of all, right, is if you've got your foundation in order, you've upscaled your analytics capabilities, and you've started to establish a good, healthy way of working together, is driving that adoption and lasting change. And we're talking about, if you just take the sales teams or the field force, right? We're talking about using AI recommendations to sell differently, right? So you want the field force not to be threatened by it, but you've got to figure out how it works symbiotically. So the adoption with analytics products and solutions is, I think, the biggest challenge. And that's not something that's going to go away. It's an ongoing way of working together, learning, adapting, pivoting, rinse and repeat.
Bharti, I love the way you categorize these challenges. I know in the past you've also talked about getting attracted to shiny objects or driven by buzzwords and trends, and how that is challenging. Now, as a leader who has been on this evolution journey, what pitfalls and challenges have you personally faced, and how did you navigate them?
Sure. So I think there are other things that you sort of navigate as you're driving this kind of transformation, right? Particularly as you're taking these areas from a back office function to more of a strategic thought driver. So you mentioned shiny objects. I think, some of these things are just how traditionally we view digital, right? And digitization. And I think the good news is most companies care about it. They are focused on digital. The bad news is then maybe too much focus and everybody is involved. You just find teams everywhere, maybe even talking to the same vendors, and there's not a clear path. So that's one. I think for me personally, honestly, every challenge comes with learning and adapting, and it wouldn't be fun without it. And again, this is not such a clean path forward, right? Especially in healthcare and pharma, where we're all trying to do this together. So I think, personally, I wouldn't say there are challenges that we have not been able to navigate. I think certainly having the whole organization aligned around the mission and having the leadership bought in to the fact that they believe in a data culture, and that as we make decisions and recommendations, top leadership, right? And how we will make financial decisions will be based on data. I think that tone helps greatly. And fortunately for me, that was established, even when I joined. I think, maybe something else that we've struggled with has been this constant juggling of really enabling the business day to day while driving this major transformation with the same set of resources, right? Stretched too thin. Kudos to all of the data digital analytics teams driving this transformation, because they are really doing it in parallel, and it's the same people, kind of having to deliver for today as well as plan for the future. So I think those are some of the things. But what I've also had is really great partnership with the teams and the business teams, and they've all overall embraced, I think, the journey. Now it's, we're all aligned, we're all holding hands, moving towards the same direction. So now it's about really finding incremental value, real business impact, and then not being afraid, right, to learn. And maybe the final thing, which is not a challenge unique to us, but I think generally is, how much do you invest in these areas? How do you show the value? What is enough, right? How much, should you have a team of 20 data scientists, 50, 60? And if you have more, is there incremental value? So I think that's an ongoing challenge for the industry and this area as a whole.
Right. I can understand the complex environments that you work in. And you are being very humble by saying how you have navigated this. But understanding how complex the environments are, I can truly appreciate your ability to navigate these challenges. Now, I want to switch gears and talk about some focus areas. As you look to drive maturity across people, processes, and systems, what are some macro level areas that must be carefully navigated? Like, I hear a lot about automation, partnerships, talent. Would love to hear your perspective.
Sure. So I think there's a method definitely to the madness. And I would say that hopefully most organizations are past the point where they are still trying to organize the data, and they're on their way, if not done, with the cloud modernization of all of the data and the data systems. I think that is just table stakes, right? You cannot have an AI strategy, analytics strategy without having your data in order. So that's a given. And I think this is also a link sometimes that is not intuitive and obvious to business leaders, right? Who have not sort of grown up in the whole data digital area for the last 10 years, right? So it's not interesting. There's no direct link to value. But I think folks that work in this area know that there is no AI, there is no business strategy enabled through analytics without a proper data strategy, governance, systems, and all of that. So I would say that's one. I think the second thing is around identifying what you want to focus on that will move the needle and show value quickly, right? So that's something I think is unique to each organization. In some, it may be as simple as your business intelligence platform and your KPIs not being consistent within a brand or across brands, across the whole company. Something as simple and basic as that. Once you're able to have consistent KPIs and definitions across every brand and look at the business consistently, has reaped huge benefits. So again, it depends on where your company is, right? For others, I think identifying, is it a launch, right, that you're really trying to power up? Is it a therapeutic area where you're trying to maybe shorten the time it takes for proper diagnosis? So I think identifying those right business problems to go after and tackle first is extremely important. Otherwise, you will be spending 3 years just focusing on the modernization journey without really enabling the use cases in parallel that can show success. So that's critically important. We get so buried in the day-to-day and the deliverables and the work that sometimes we forget to have enough change management conversations with the organization as a whole and remind them that this is a transformation in parallel with the day-to-day business and the day-to-day issues, right? And the fire of the day. So I think sometimes taking like the whole team to pull their head out of delivering and participating in conversations about what's working in the transformation, what's needed, what's not working, how do we pivot, keeps the organization reminded that it's a journey, right? And it's not a 6-month thing of, okay, you started and you're done. And then finally, I would say it's, how long do you let things stick before you change again? And, again, that's very unique to different companies to say, okay, how long is it for me to say this model is working or not working? And, once I've done the basics and established the foundation, do I now pivot to something else, or should I change up the model completely? And those, again, it's tough to answer. It's very unique to each company and what the priorities are for the moment.
Yeah, those are some great points, Bharti. Especially you talked about change management and the importance of mindset in change, which is very important in a transformation journey. Now, since we are talking about people evolution, specifically as it relates to data and analytics driven commercialization, it is important to understand how this evolution will be tracked and measured. For leaders who want to get on the people evolution journey, how do you really measure success on such initiatives?
Yeah, it's tough, right? So first, it's not an initiative. I think it's a whole movement, right? It's a movement of changing how a company drives decisions, runs the business, and drives customer experience, patient experience, right? Is it really
Absolutely.
through the power of data and digital? And I think also, before I answer your track and measure question, the whole people cultural aspects, we've talked a bit about it, but it cannot be, it's these subtle ways a company operates that shows whether they truly believe in being data driven, or they're not all on board with it. And those are little things like, who is presenting the numbers, right? Is it the brand head, or is it really the analytics lead? In a town hall, when you're talking about a launch or you're talking about some major business topic, do you bring the analytics lead in, or the insights lead to present with you, or is it mainly a marketing and sales presentation? I think those are subtle signs of culture. And then, in our case, I think we really had our leadership modeling the way, because if there were certain recommendations being made, does your leader ask whether this is an analytics recommendation? Is it endorsed by us or not, right? So those are subtle signs that an organization truly is starting to change the culture. And then the question is, how do you track and measure? So this is a great question and a great point, and it's very dear to my heart. Because I think where analytics teams need to go is that we measure the ROI of everything, of the whole company. But I think we shy away from measuring the ROI of our own work. And I think this is where we need to go, right? So, and it's not an easy change even for the analytics team. Forget about convincing kind of marketing and finance what the value of your work is, right? So that I think comes second. But first is, do you have tracking in place where you're able to look at all of the work that you've done in a year? It could be hundreds and maybe 1,000 projects or pieces of analytics. Can you tie each one to some kind of value generated, whether it's, and if you ask me what is value, honestly, it's top line and bottom line, and compliance, right? As well as experience, I would add. So those are the 4 big buckets. And cost savings, right? Is there any hardcore cost savings associated with it? So I think where teams need to go is to tie their work to tangible top line, bottom line, value contributions, and put measures in place to be able to say what it is. And over time, it's not going to be perfect. It won't be exact and it won't be thorough. But over time, that muscle and that discipline is built, where you are then starting to analyze almost the work you did, right, that quarter, to say, well, we worked on a few things that are not directly related to value we could have added. So maybe we should do less of this and more of that. So it's great even for the analytics teams. And then to take it a step further, if you can have, the brand marketing teams and finance on board with the opportunity that the data science, analytics, insights teams have identified, that's even better. That's going a step further. But again, I think this takes time but I think it should be baked into the overall strategy, is how you're going to measure it. Subtle ways of measuring, right? Like, are you seeing just in terms of people, right? Recognition, awards, are you seeing more and more of the insights, analytics, and data teams and operations teams being mentioned there? Say that, if these teams are not there, they may not function properly, right? So it's these subtle awards and kudos as well. That's a big measure.
Sure. Bharti, I love the passion with which you articulate the transformation journey and what it takes to be successful. In my final question, I want to talk about some next steps. As leaders look into the future of their commercial organization, how should they think about building their teams and the talent pool? What do they need to do differently?
I think, we need, so a few thoughts around that. One, I think we need a mix of people that understand pharma or healthcare, whatever the domain is, and people outside the industry. And I think both are equally important because healthcare data is complex, and there is, folks that are in data, and this well from your experiences. You've got to know how to integrate the data. It's not straightforward. It's dirty data. It may not be big data to the scale of other companies, but it's not clean data. So there are a lot of tips and tricks that people that have been working with healthcare data know that an average person from outside the industry will not know, and it will be a long learning curve. We are delivering business today while planning for the future. So I think that mix of other talent mixed in with pharma is a great thing. The second thing is that I believe in what I'll say bilingual talent. So I think if I don't like to put data scientists in a box which is more technical, insights people or business people in another box that's more business. I think if you have bilingual analytics teams that are business savvy, they understand the business context and are able to do analytics or data science, that's a very powerful combination and tough to find, right? So people that understand the context for what they are doing, and also then able to communicate and do some data storytelling, right? So you're serving insights and nuggets as opposed to getting lost in 50-page PowerPoint of just data charts. So that's another one. And finally, I think it's the within the organization having the right levels. I remember early on, I don't think we even had a data scientist job title. They were put either in marketing or they were put in IT. And so those things had to be created. So it's having the right, just the HR processes and structure. And then once you have them and you've attracted them, I think it's a different, or maybe it needs a bit more tailored approach to understand the challenges and create an environment that will help them thrive and succeed. And including meeting culture is another one, right? Like a data scientist don't like to sit in tons of meetings. They want to do data science. So that's what I mean by kind of having an environment that makes them thrive.
Yep. Bharti, those are some great points on building the team and the talent pool that'll help the organizations in the future. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us today. As we all know, every leader is either actively working or planning on transformation initiatives, or, the way you called it, there's a movement, right?
Yeah.
You have been on this journey and have been tremendously successful in transforming the entire function. What I find remarkable is that unlike many others, you're not solely focused on technology. Rather, you talk about the importance of people, evolution, talent, mindset, culture, which I totally agree are all critical in achieving true transformation. I'm sure our audience will find the insights you shared extremely valuable. It has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank you so much. My pleasure. And it was a lot of fun. And your questions brought up a lot of reflection over the last few years of having done this. And it's a fun job, right? Fun area to be in. And finally, it's on the C-suite agenda. And data digital is very sexy these days. So it's a great time to be in this field.
We're finally getting noticed in this journey.
maybe a bit too much, but it's great.
To the audience, as I always say, you are the most important part of the show. The tremendous success of this show is because of you. Thank you so much for joining us today, and tune in soon for the next episode.
Thanks for joining us on the Life Sciences Leadership Podcast. If you loved this episode, please share with friends and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. For more information, visit lifesciencespodcast.com. Until next time.